Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I want to continue where I left off yesterday. So I spoke yesterday about mudita, about what it is and about what it is not, and introduced a little bit about the process of cultivating mudita and what that entails. I want to expand a little bit on both. First, about mudita itself, to expand a little bit by way of speaking about it as the Abhidhamma introduces it. So in the Abhidhamma, mudita is described as one of the two occasional beautiful mental factors. Occasional illimitable. And it is also described as one of the, and there are several occasional beautiful mental factors. Unlike metta, which is a universal beautiful mental factor, arising in all pure states of mind, mudita only arises under quite specific conditions. This is the Abhidhamma way of saying mudita only arises when metta is inclining to the good fortune of others. So it is dependent on the good fortune of other beings. So this I find very, very helpful, because the proximate cause for mudita to arise, as described in the Abhidhamma, is seeing the success of another. So that's just as seeing the goodness of another is a proximate cause in metta. In mudita, the proximate cause is seeing somebody else's happiness, their good fortune. So it depends very much on that success, that very specific condition of the success of another. It's not universal. But when it is developed, it is like metta and any of the other Brahmaviharas, immeasurable. Yeah. So these are subtle differences, but I think very important. So, of course, many of you know the Abhidhamma describes mental factors in terms of their function, their manifestation, their proximate cause. So the function of mudita, described in the Abhidhamma, is simply not being envious. It causes us to not be envious, to be happy on account of others. And it manifests with the reduction and loss, actually, of aversion, simple aversion, any form of aversion on account of somebody else. And that subsidence of aversion is described as how we see if this practice is successful. It succeeds when aversion subsides, diminishes or disappears. And it fails when it produces what in it's kind of a old-fashioned English, but it produces merriment, is the way it's described in the text. Giddy kind of happiness. And you may remember last night I spoke about the near and far enemies. And this is another expression of those near and far enemies. So the near enemy being that giddy happiness, which indicates that the practice isn't going the way we really wish it would. And the far enemy being the aversion, specifically the envy aspect of aversion, which is how the success of the practice is indicated when that subsides. That's a clumsy sentence, but I think you can probably translate it better than I said. So these are very good, we say in English, rules of thumb, general guidelines. If you're wondering if your practice is succeeding, going in the right direction, or going in the wrong direction, just look. Look and see. Are you getting carried away by piti, by joy? Is aversion subsiding or disappearing altogether? Envy, jealousy, aversion. Somebody said today in the small group, that I thought it was so good, she said, oh yeah, it was really easy at first, but then the happiness, it just got to be too much. And it was a really good description of the near enemy, that giddy happiness, which can carry us away. And it can become so intense, it is actually unpleasant. It is real dukkha, which seems paradoxical, but it's true. I mean, it can be very strong, and we really feel the disturbance in the mind from the strong energy of the happiness. And so often this arises in the first categories of the practice, because these people are easy to radiate mudita for, and we get kind of carried away very easily by these states that are at first glance pleasant, but then we begin to see, well, maybe not. And there's nothing we need to do about it. This is actually a natural part of the process. Except if you see that you've begun to get carried away in that, just notice. And notice the quality of the energy in the mind and in the body. Notice if it's pleasant. Notice if it's unpleasant. You can take a little bit of a vipassana break and just pay attention to that. Pay attention to the specific quality of that experience. And when you do that, the mind will purify itself. It will naturally let go of what is painful, unpleasant, what is dukkha. Because we're not stupid. And maybe this will happen quickly, maybe it will take some time. It can take some time for us to really connect with the subtlety of this dukkha. And the more we look, the more we see, the more we observe, the more obvious it gets. So simply acknowledge it, pay attention to it, pay attention to the quality of the experience. And when you've connected with that, then return to the mudita, return to cultivating the mudita, wherever you were. And the way we work with the far enemy, the subsidence of the far enemy is very much the same. So if any form of aversion arises, particularly envy or jealousy, acknowledge them. Notice them. If they're very, very strong, you can take a little vipassana time, just paying attention to them. Put them aside and continue with the practice. And really, this strategy can be used for any difficult mind state. I'm highlighting it for the near and far enemies. But any difficult mind state, we work with it in this practice in the same way. Acknowledge it, put it to the side, hold it, in this case with mudita, with metta, really have metta for ourselves because it might be difficult. And then return to the mudita practice. I just having a moment of mudita for you, Donatella, you were magnificent. I'll try to give you fewer long sentences. So the other aspect that is highlighted in this, the simple way the Abhidhamma lays out the nature of mudita is the fact that it is a beautiful mental factor that is occasional. It arises when conditions are present for it to arise. So what that means is, we say in English, you're off the hook, meaning it's not our responsibility to create mudita. It's only our responsibility to do whatever we can do to create the conditions for it to arise. It arises by itself. We don't do it. We don't create it. We don't make it. This is so liberating because we can burn so much energy in the practice trying to make these states. But we're not creating anything. We're merely connecting again and again and again. We are being mindful and aware of that proximate cause in that other person, that success of that other person. We're inclining our mind to that over and over again and connecting with that. It's really very free. All we have to do is keep connecting. This is that aspect of mindfulness. It is so essential for any of the Brahma Vihara practices. If this sounds familiar, it's because you've heard it before in the metta teachings. So the other thing, of course, just like metta, we don't create it and we don't send it. That's an essential thing to remember over and over and over again. So that's so freeing too, because we can just rest back and connect and let everything else fall into place by itself. And really, this is resting back in anatta, because we can't control conditions completely that allow mudita to arise. It'll arise when it arises, and we just have to do the best we can to create those conditions, and then things fall into place by themselves. So it's actually incredibly simple. We make it incredibly difficult, but it is very simple. So don't worry if you find yourself getting all tangled up in language, thinking about joy and happiness and success and what should I be connecting with here? Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? Don't worry about any of that. Mudita is based on the proximate cause. Mudita is based on the wholesome success of other people. Just leave it that very colloquially. It's not something very technical. It's just common sense, or common understanding of this word success. And because mudita is an illimitable and immeasurable mind state, it isn't limited by our preferences about what their happiness should look like, other than the fact that happiness needs to be wholesome. It's very easy in the Dhamma world to dismiss mundane joy and to actually look down on it as something that's just mundane. But actually, the Buddha didn't criticize that so long as it was gained in a wholesome way without harming others. So there's nothing wrong with that ice cream, or if you have a ton of money, that whatever it is that you happen to have, so long as it's not harming others and you've gotten by that money to buy that by a wholesome means, there's nothing wrong with that. And what each of us would do if we had unlimited funds is unique to us. And the wholesome happiness of beings doesn't have to be in accord with our particular preferences of what brings us happiness or what we think is a useful way of spending our money. So here's a very good example that I saw the other day, and it was such a good example of this for me. I have my values and my judgments, and they get in the way. They cause dosa to arise. So, example, I was in the monastery car in Yangon, and somebody drove by in a Lamborghini, a bright yellow Lamborghini. Mamma mia. It just shocked me. And it was like, what immediately arose out of that shock was dosa. In this country, in this world? How could you have that? I had just this immediate response coming from my values about the environment and my political colors. And also assuming anybody driving such a thing would be on a certain side of the political divide here. So if there was a cartoon, you would have seen smoke coming out of my ears and the eyeballs coming out of my head. I really was quite beside myself for a few minutes. It was like, that was dosa. It certainly wasn't mudita. And I had it just took a little while, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute. Tomorrow the Mudita Retreat starts. I have work to do. And it actually didn't take long for me to come to the place of going, I would never want a Lamborghini. It's the last thing in the world I would even want to sit in. But I'm happy for your happiness, or I can be. And so this is actually a very good illustration of how it's not, Mudita opposes envy and jealousy, but more generally, it opposes dosa. You don't have to want what somebody has to abide in the far enemy of mudita. It functions as not being envious, but it also functions in a more general way, or it manifests in a more general way when any kind of aversion about somebody's wholesome happiness disperses. So it also really is a very good illustration of how sometimes the difficulty in connecting with mudita, the difficulty in creating those conditions for it to arise, come out of how we judge and relate to the other person based on dosa. Mudita is a relational practice, and how we are relating to those other people affects whether we can access the mudita or not. So this is a really important thing to keep remembering, because it's not about the mudita itself, but about how we are relating to that other person. The mudita is, whether it arises or not, is very much dependent on. Another example, another recent example. When I flew here, Aria and I flew here together early in January. And because of her physical condition, she needs, for a very long flight, to actually buy a business class ticket because of her leg. It's just impossible for her to sit that long in a regular seat. So I, of course, did not, because I have no such excuses, and I don't like to spend money that way unless I have to. So I flew regular economy class. She was in business class. So of course, I mean, the airlines torture you. You have to walk through the business class section to get to your economy class seat. As if this makes us want to do this the next time and spend all that money, I don't know. But so I walked past, and there is Aria sitting there in her very, very nice business class seat. And it was one of those seats that actually lies flat. But it's not something. And I just felt happy for her. It was so lovely. It was like, oh, I'm so glad you have that. And truth be told, I was also a little envious. But it wasn't huge. We were on the same plane. We were going to get to the same place at the same time. No big deal. So I sat down in my little regular seat, as they are, with the seat right here next to you. And, it was pretty tight. But it was fine. I was happy to be coming here. And I was not far from the little curtain that separates the economy class from the business class. And I kept looking at that little curtain and feeling happy that Aria was up there comfortable, because, yeah, I knew how uncomfortable it would have been for her to be in the back. And then after a little while, I really realized it. It's like, wow, wait a minute. This feels really different. And I realized it's like I was looking at that little curtain and it was making me happy because Maria was up there. She was comfortable. I was happy for her. And I was also quite happy we were coming back here together. So it was like it was a happy thing. Then I remembered, well, wait a minute. I don't usually relate to that little curtain in the same way. So normally I look at that little curtain and I think, oh, there's filthy rich people up there, and it's us back here in cattle class, and I'm full of dosa and full of envy. It was really a beautiful practice moment because I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's the same curtain. It's the same situation. The mind is totally different. The mudita could arise because the conditions were there. And here's the thing. I could connect to the success of another. Here's the critical part, without dosa. In our culture, this is not easy. It spun me into a lot of contemplation about our cultural conditioning around the success of other people. In our hyper-competitive society, we are so, I would say, brainwashed to believe that our worth is based on what we have, and that if you have it, I don't. And if I don't have it, I'm somehow less than you, somehow diminished by it, and somehow diminished by your success. Of course, this is all complete rubbish. I was going to use another word that was impolite, but it's not true. We don't live in a zero-sum society where you either have it or don't, and you're diminished by somebody else having something you think you should. So in this competitive environment, of course, dosa arises when somebody has something that we don't have and that we like. Because we live from this place of thinking that zero-sum story is correct. So relating to the success of another without dosa is our primary challenge in this practice. So if it arises in your practice, I shouldn't say if, I should say when it arises in the practice, it's what Munindra used to call lawful. It is in accord with the Dhamma. This is natural. It means this is being purified out of our mind, out of our hearts. And this is why, just as with the metta practice, the sequence of categories in the mudita practice goes the way it does. So the easy categories in this case are those categories where dosa is least likely to arise on account of somebody's success. And those beings where their success is easy to see. But the first person, as it's mentioned in the Visuddhimagga, the first person, the old-fashioned English expression for this person is the boon companion. It's very old English, but it means somebody spoke today about somebody in their life, they were like sunshine. The Visuddhimagga, the person who is always happy, always smiling, and makes us happy to be with them. So this is presented as the easiest category. And it's not about their success. It's about whether we were likely to have dosa arising on account of their prayer, bringing them to mind. This connection between the arising of mudita and the substance of dosa is really an important one to remember. So I wanted to speak quite a bit about that. And one thing I wanted to add to this, the last thing I wanted to say before I close tonight, is about personality types. And each of the Brahma Viharas is, the development of each of the Brahma Viharas is indicated as medicine for specific kinds of people. So metta is indicated as medicine for somebody who has a lot of ill will, somebody who looks at other people and goes, oh, I hope something bad happens to you. Yeah, just ill will. Karuna is indicated as medicine for somebody who has a lot of cruelty or callousness. They just don't care about the misfortune of other people. And mudita is indicated as medicine for somebody who has a lot of just general aversion, irritation around other people. And you can add to that, it's not in the text, but I would definitely add to that judgment, which is laced with just irritation. And then just to close out this, to finish it, upekkha is indicated for somebody who has a lot of attachment. So if you are a dosa type person, this is one of the personality types, what flavor of dosa do you most land on? Do you land on general judgment and irritation? Do you land on callousness, not caring? Do you land on schadenfreude, wanting something bad to happen to those people? And when I read this, it just totally opened my mind, because it explained why I like this practice so much. So, and, I think it's so funny how of all the 4 Brahma Viharas, 3 of them undo, or 3 of them are medicine for different forms of dosa. If you are a greed type, it's easier. You just go to equanimity. So anyway, just putting that out there for your perhaps amusement, but also encouragement, because all of us land on one of these things. And I think it's particularly interesting, the difference between metta and mudita, because cruelty, the state that karuna purifies, is quite different from those two, from the ill will and aversion. It's very easy to see, oh yeah, cruelty is different from ill will. Cruelty is different from aversion. But aversion and ill will, that takes a little longer to discern the difference between the two of them. Aversion is just that state of not liking, being irritated by, having a judgment about, negative judgment about. Yeah, the whole thing about the Lamborghini is pure dosa, that form of dosa, of aversion. Ill will is a little different. Ill will is the opposite of goodwill. It's like, may you be happy. Well, may you be unhappy. How ill will manifests. So it's a slightly different flavor of dosa than simple aversion. And it can manifest as that state of rejoicing when something bad happens to somebody we don't like. Yeah, so Schadenfreude in German. I don't pronounce it correctly, I'm sure, but it's a word we use in English as well. But this rejoicing in the misfortune of another is kind of a pure manifestation of ill will. It's like, oh, good. So if you tend to that, if you tend to, when you see somebody you disapprove of and you hope something happens to their Lamborghini, or something bad happens to somebody you don't like and you find yourself happy, metta is the practice for you. And if you see that same Lamborghini and you don't really wish that anything bad happens to the person in it, but you're really irritated about it, mudita is the practice for you. And of course, the same applies to how you relate to yourself. So anyway, I've been going on for a long time now, and I'll close with that. And really just to understand the subtlety of what mudita and metta oppose, what they purify. It really, really is very helpful to know these. So may your afternoon and evening and night, depending on where you are, be an abiding in mudita as opposed to dosa of any form, but particularly that form of irritation or judgment. And may your sincere and repeated inclination be the cause and condition for much mudita to arise. Thank you for your kind attention, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.